Well, we're back bright and early on a Monday morning with a couple of plans in mind for today as well. It's a little bit warmer than it has been. Once again, we're starting to see double figures on temperatures, which is what we definitely need after the last few months. That wind has finally stopped, although I have heard that in a week's time there's a chance that it might come back. So we'll make sure we're ready for that when it does occur. What I've been doing is cleaning out one of these greenhouses. Obviously all greenhouses at the moment have got nothing planted in them apart from in here where we've got things in containers. But I've got a spare greenhouse. I've dug ground over it a little bit, getting it a bit of a weed, because we're going to put this first plants of the year in today, and that's broad beans. They're very cold hardy, so you could plant those outside. But to offer them a little bit of extra protection, I'm going to put them along the back of one of those little greenhouses. And at least that way, if that wind does return, they're not going to sustain any damage. And while there's nothing in there at the moment, we might as well take advantage of that. So that's my plan for today. I'll just quickly show you those beans. There's a couple in particular that caught my attention for good reason. That's these two. Look how big they are now. Really big, healthy little plants. Look at those roots again. We did say we might put them on into a bigger container, but because the roots are growing so quickly, it's probably not going to be too long before they outgrow that as well, even if I pop them in a 2 litre or something. So while we've got that space out there, we might as well take advantage on it, save ourselves a bit of compost at the same time. So they're all going in ground today. Apart from doing that, did a little bit of shopping over the weekend as well. I picked up a few seeds in preparation for the new season. I've actually got a container of potato peelings there. I'll go and chuck them in compost. So I popped out to Chesterfield because they had a farmer's market on. And we've all been discussing the fact that because Wilko's has now closed down, it's a place that most people would get their onion sets from and the seed potatoes. So now we're having to branch out a little bit farther than as local shops and try and find somewhere that we can get stuff from. And there is places out there, depending on area that you live in. Usually places that supply animal feed and things like that will keep a stock of things like compost and a few seeds as well, which include seed potatoes and onion sets. So best thing to do is find out a few names and give them a ring before you go there. But I heard about this little market and we went to it last year as well, and we got quite a few bits and bobs. It's where we actually got the seeds from for those Florence red onions that we did that turned out really well. Unfortunately this year they didn't have any, or they'd already all sold out. But I did pick up a few bits, and mainly it was seed potatoes. We're not ready to plant potatoes just yet, but we got some nice potatoes there. And as you can see, there's no chits on them at the moment. It's far too early for that. These are called Carus, if I pronounced that correctly. And they're as main crops. Once again, we did go there to get some Sarpos, but they didn't have any. So just get whatever you can get at the moment. Last year we didn't do any first earlies. This year I've decided I am. We're going to be doing all those potatoes in containers. There's none going in ground. For me personally, in this area, it's not worth it. They get battered by winds. They get devastated by slugs. So everything is going into containers, and as you might be aware, we're doing a double-sized container garden this year as well, so we're going to try and cram in as much as we possibly can. So I've only actually bought a few potatoes for the entire season, and these ones are first earlies and they're rocket. Usually ready to harvest in around 12 weeks after planting, because you're only going to get little, what they call new potatoes, about the size of an egg, and then they're good to go. So we've got enough of those to probably do 3 containers. And those main crops, it's probably 4 or 5 containers worth there, so even though it doesn't look a lot, there's going to be plenty. And I've also got some called Casablanca. Got a few of them anyway, just to try them out, because I've never had those before. And then we've got the old reliable second earlies, which is Charlotte. These grow more oval than a regular potato, but they can grow to a good size. And these are usually ready to harvest in about 17 weeks. Although second earlies, you can let those grow on for a bit longer if you want, until tops of plants have died down. Then you'll get potatoes that are slightly bigger. Don't do that with your first earlies though, because they only grow to the size of eggs anyway, and the longer you leave them in ground or in a container, the more chance that they have got a rotting or slugs get into them. So normally I either dig in a container, and if I can pull out a potato that's an half decent size, that's when I harvest them, because they don't store either. So as soon as you harvest them, you need to use them. Your Charlottes will last a little bit longer and they can get a little bit bigger. And then of course you've got your main crops, which you plant last, usually for me, around May time, end of April, start of May. And they need the longest growing season, so they can be left in ground growing right up until end of year. And with those particular ones, you just leave them until all the tops completely die back. The potatoes in the ground will still be fine. And then what you want to be doing when we get to that stage, not that I'm jumping gun at the moment, is cut the tops of all those plants off on your main crops as soon as they've all died back, and then leave them for a couple of more weeks, because what will happen then is they'll develop an harder skin on that potato, and that's why your main crop potatoes will store for so much longer. But we're not there yet. We're not even planting these. I just had to get some while I can. And then of course we've got a couple of onion sets. Again, I'm not doing loads and loads of onion sets because we're doing them in containers. And we've got quite a mixture of sizes with these. They're store on. See, we've got some nice little onion sets, and I'm going to be starting those off probably this weekend. We're not going to be putting them outside. What I do is I put them in trays and I just push them down until that little top bit is the only bit that's sticking out, and we just leave them in these trays, and they'll quite happily put down roots, and then they'll start to grow green tops on them, and that gets you a jump on it. And it's especially useful if you are planting them outside, because if you just put those in ground outside, the birds think them tops are little worms, and they'll just go along and they'll pull all your sets up and then just leave them, because it's not quite what they thought. But then you have to go around and replant them all. And the way we combat that is by putting them in cells, something like that, just big enough to push that little onion set in, or something a bit bigger, entirely up to you. If it's bigger, you can let the tops grow for a little bit longer, just in case that weather does turn. But you don't want to put your onion sets outdoors just yet. You want to just encourage a bit of growth by doing what we're going to be doing. And then when you do take them out and you push them into your ground, they've already got a root ball established, so those birds won't be able to pull them up, and that's why we do that. So we've got those, and I think we've got a couple of bags. Yeah, we've got 2 bags of those, and there's probably not a lot, but there's still somewhere in the region of around 50 onion sets there. And we're doing some in containers this year for a change, rather than planting them in raised beds, and see what we can get, because I want to maximise produce from that container garden area. We'll cover every little thing that we do as it comes time. And then I've got a few French bean seeds. These are called Blue Lake. Normally we'd plant something like Cobra, but saw the Blue Lakes and thought, as we always do in this channel, let's get something different for a change. So that's what we've bought in preparation for new growing season. And that will go back in house, because we don't want to leave it outside, because then potatoes will get damp. And then we're going to have to chip those potatoes before we plant them, and we'll cover that in a video when that time comes. And there is a particular way that you want to be doing that to get best results. That's for another video. What we're concentrating on at the moment is sorting these broad beans out. And it's also worth mentioning that all of last year, every single month, we did a video at the beginning of every month, and they was what to sow and grow for that particular month. So we've now got a playlist with 12 of those on to cover every month through the entire year. So what I'm going to do, rather than go through it all over again, is I'm going to leave a link to the video for that particular month in description, and I'll put that on every video all the way through that month, and then that will take you straight to that video, and you can see, for example, what you need to be sowing and growing in February, and any little things that you might want to do or keep an eye out for. So we'll list those continuously all the way through February, and then we'll do the same for March and so on. So it's definitely a really good reference to have, because I know there's a few people that have mentioned that this is going to be their first year growing. That's going to help keep you on the right path and get the best results that you can for your first year growing. So having said all that, I'm going to pop into that greenhouse next door, and I'm going to get us first planting a 2024 underway, and that's the broad beans. So this is part of the greenhouse. I'm going to be putting those plants. I've just dug across that back bit, because for the moment we only need that. Just do what needs doing as it needs doing is your best way. So first mucking these at you. I'm going to keep them a little bit away from the back of that greenhouse. I'm not going to put them miles apart, just enough so they've got a little bit of room. And I think that'll do it. So basically all we need to do is make us a hole. We'll give this a weed as we go through. I'm sure there's quite a bit of weed buried below. But if we take one of these out, and that's another reason why we need to get these sorted, because if you leave them too long, you'll not get those roots out without really damaging them. But that's what you're looking at. Quite a lot of roots for a small plant. And all we're going to do is pop that straight in. Press it in nice and firm. And that's his first planting. And then just repeat and weed. If they aren't angled to that degree, you're probably going to have to really rough them up to get them out without damaging your plant too much. And as you see, that came out a lot easier. So in that, I'll press it down nice and firm. A little bit of glass there, we don't want that. Your biggest battle is going to be keeping slugs away, but we'll do what we can. And another one in, job done. That one's probably the smallest out of the lot, but it'll soon pick up. Now it's got somewhere to put its roots down. So just a few more, and we've got that first row in. You're going to have issues with black fly as well with these at some point, but there's ways that we can combat that to some degree. We'll sort that out as we need to. It just feels really good to be getting something planted after such a long, cold few months. We're finally getting a start on it. So there we go. 7 nice healthy broad bean plants in there. Now we're going to have to think of ways to keep them protected. Normally I'd water those in, but the ground is quite damp, so for now I'm just going to leave those and let those roots start growing. So a really good start to the week as first plants in ground for 2024, and now we need to look after them. And there's a couple of ways we can do that with broad beans. If you've got any quite good sized clear plastic bottles, you can cut the bottoms off and then put them over the tops of those plants, and that way slugs can't get to them just until those plants get established, which is what I did last year, and it worked really well. If I've still got any of those bottles left. If not, I'll start and collect some. Other than that, I was thinking about getting some of those string bags that you can get with the pull ties on them, So you can just cover the whole plant up, pull that string at the bottom right up to that stem, and again that should stop slugs getting to those leaves. But we'll see how they go for today. I'll have a look in shed and see what we've got. So for a Monday morning, that's about it. But thank you so much for being on board for this new season of growing, and best of luck to any new gardeners that are just starting out this year. We'll go step by step through every month and try and get as much fresh homegrown vegetables as we can. And if you've not already done it, please hit that subscribe button and press that notifications bell, and I'll see you on next update. Take care.